June 1944. The most powerful invasion force in history was preparing to cross the English Channel. More than 1 million Allied soldiers were gathering in Britain. Thousands of ships waited along the coast. Aircraft filled the skies. And across the water, Nazi Germany was watching. Hitler knew the invasion was coming. His generals knew the invasion was coming. The question was never if the Allies would attack. The question was, where? German commanders studied every report, every intercepted message, every movement of Allied troops, and everything pointed toward one answer. Pas-de-Calais, the shortest route between Britain and France, the obvious place to attack, the place Hitler feared most. But there was something he did not know. The massive army preparing to invade Calais was not real. The tanks were fake. The camps were fake. The radio messages were fake. Even the plans Germany discovered were exactly what the Allies wanted them to find. Because before the first soldier landed on the beaches of Normandy, a different battle had already begun. A battle fought without bullets, without explosions, without armies charging forward. A battle fought with lies. The Allies created an entire ghost army, placed it under one of their most feared generals, and convinced Hitler that the real invasion was still coming, even after D-Day had already started. This is the story of Operation Fortitude, the greatest military deception of World War II, and how a fake army helped decide the fate of Europe. By early 1944, Nazi Germany was facing a war on multiple fronts. In the east, German forces were locked in a brutal fight against the Soviet Union. But Hitler knew another attack was coming. A different kind of attack, an invasion from the west. For years, Britain had been the Allied base across the English Channel. American soldiers, British soldiers, Canadian forces, equipment, aircraft, ships. Every month, the military buildup became larger, and Germany knew exactly what it meant. Sooner or later, the Allies would try to return to mainland Europe. The only mystery was the location, and for Hitler, guessing correctly could change everything. Because an amphibious invasion is one of the most dangerous military operations in history, soldiers have to cross open water, land on defended beaches, move equipment onto enemy territory, and establish a position before defenders can push them back into the sea. If Germany discovered the landing site early, the invasion could fail before it truly began. To stop this attack, Germany created one of the largest defensive systems in history, the Atlantic Wall. Thousands of miles of coastal defenses stretching across occupied Europe, concrete bunkers, artillery positions, machine gun nests, minefields, beach obstacles, everything designed for one purpose: destroy the Allied invasion before it could gain a foothold. But there was one major problem. The coastline was enormous. Germany could not defend everywhere equally. They had to predict where the Allies would land. And one location stood above all others: Pas-de-Calais. Looking at a map, Calais made perfect sense. It was the shortest distance between Britain and France, the fastest route across the English Channel, the easiest place to provide air support, and the most direct road toward Germany itself. To many German commanders, Normandy looked unlikely. Calais looked obvious. But Hitler needed proof. He needed intelligence. He needed confirmation that his prediction was correct. And soon, the Allies would give him exactly what he wanted, not because he discovered their secret, but because they wanted him to believe he had. The Allied commanders understood something important. They could not hide the invasion. Not completely. Millions of soldiers cannot disappear. Thousands of vehicles cannot be invisible. A massive fleet cannot secretly appear overnight. Germany was watching. Spies were searching. Planes were observing. Radio operators were listening. Trying to hide everything was impossible. So Allied intelligence changed the question. They stopped asking, "How do we hide the invasion?" and started asking something far more dangerous. How do we make Germany look in the wrong direction? They didn't need Hitler to believe there was no attack. They only needed him to believe the real attack was somewhere else. And to create that illusion, they would build one of the most unusual weapons in military history, an army made almost entirely of lies. The Allies knew the greatest danger was not reaching France. It was what happened after they arrived. Because hidden behind the German defenses was another threat. A force that could decide the entire invasion. German reserves, thousands of experienced soldiers, armored divisions, and powerful panzer units waiting behind the coastline. If these forces moved quickly toward the real landing beaches, the Allies could be trapped, the invasion force could be surrounded, and years of preparation could collapse within days. So the Allies needed more than a successful landing. They needed time, they needed confusion, they needed Hitler to hesitate, and that was the real purpose behind Operation Fortitude. The idea was simple, but almost impossible to execute. Convince Germany that the largest invasion force ever assembled was not the real invasion force. Make Hitler believe that Normandy was only a distraction, and that the true attack would come later, at Pas-de-Calais. To make the lie believable, the Allies needed something bigger than a fake document. Bigger than a false message. They needed an entire army, so they created one. The First United States Army Group, known as FUSAG. On paper, it was one of the most powerful Allied forces in Europe. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers, massive amounts of equipment, an invasion force preparing to strike directly at Calais. But in reality, many of those soldiers did not exist. The army was a shadow, a carefully designed illusion. Across southern England, the Allies started building the evidence Germany expected to see. They created fake military camps, fake supply areas, fake landing equipment, and rows of tanks. But these were not the machines Germany feared. Many were inflatable, lightweight structures made to look like real weapons from the air. From thousands of feet above, a German reconnaissance pilot could see what appeared to be a growing invasion force. But on the ground, some of the deadliest-looking weapons in Europe could be lifted and moved by a few men. But fake equipment was only one part of the deception. Because an army is more than tanks. An army communicates. An army gives orders. An army makes mistakes. An army leaves evidence behind. So Allied radio operators created an invisible battlefield. They transmitted fake messages, fake orders, fake movement reports. Thousands of signals designed to make German listeners believe that a massive force was preparing for war. Every conversation added another piece to the illusion. Every message made the ghost army feel more real. But there was still one major problem. Germany might believe in fake tanks. They might believe fake radio traffic. But would they believe the Allies had created a huge invasion force without a famous commander leading it? The Allies needed someone Germany already respected, someone aggressive, someone unpredictable, someone Hitler believed would lead the real attack. They chose one of the most famous American generals of World War II, George S. Patton. Patton was exactly what the deception needed. German commanders viewed him as one of the Allies' strongest battlefield leaders. They expected him to be involved in the main invasion. So when intelligence suggested Patton was commanding the force aimed at Calais, it confirmed what many Germans already believed. The pieces matched. The reports matched. The location matched. Everything seemed logical. And that was what made the deception so powerful. The Allies were not forcing Germany to believe something impossible. They were giving Germany evidence for what it already wanted to believe. The fake army was ready. The fake commander was in place. Now they needed the final weapon. Not tanks, not aircraft, not soldiers, but information. Because the next battlefield would be inside Germany's own intelligence network. The fake army was built. The fake commander was chosen. The fake messages were being sent. But none of it mattered, unless Germany discovered it. Because the greatest deception in history had a strange problem. The Allies could not simply tell Germany a lie. They had to make Germany believe it had uncovered the truth by itself. A secret discovered by the enemy is always more convincing than a story they are given. So Operation Fortitude entered its most dangerous phase, a war fought in the shadows, a war of spies. For years, Germany had sent agents into Britain. Their mission was simple: find Allied secrets, report military plans, discover where the invasion would happen. But there was something Germany did not realize. Many of the spies they trusted were no longer working for Germany. They were working for the Allies. British intelligence had secretly identified and controlled German agents operating inside the country. Instead of removing them, they turned them into weapons. These double agents would become one of the most important parts of the entire deception. The plan was extremely risky. A double agent could not just send obvious lies. If every message was fake, Germany would eventually become suspicious. So the Allies mixed truth with deception. They allowed agents to send some real information, small details, accurate reports, things that helped build trust. And slowly, German intelligence began believing these sources. The trap was not created in a single day. It was built over months, one believable message at a time. Then came the false information. Reports about troop movements, details about the fake army, signs that Patton's forces were preparing for an attack. Everything pointed toward the same conclusion: Calais, again and again and again. To German intelligence officers analyzing these reports, the picture became clear. The Allies were preparing their main invasion across the shortest part of the Channel, exactly where Germany expected. And that was the genius behind Operation Fortitude. The Allies understood human nature. The easiest person to deceive is someone who already wants to believe the lie. Hitler had always considered Calais the obvious target. Many of his commanders agreed. So every fake tank, every fake radio message, every false report was another piece of evidence confirming their existing belief. They were not questioning whether Calais was the target. They were collecting reasons to prove it was. Inside German command rooms, officers studied the information arriving from Britain. Maps were updated, reports were compared, and the same conclusion kept appearing. The Normandy area might see an attack. But the main invasion force, the dangerous invasion force, was still waiting. The army commanded by Patton, the army aimed at Calais, the army Germany feared most, except that army existed only on paper. As the date of the real invasion moved closer, the deception became even more important. Thousands of Allied soldiers prepared for Normandy. Ships moved into position. Aircraft prepared their missions. The real attack was almost ready. But across the Channel, Germany was still watching the wrong place. The illusion had worked. Operation Fortitude had placed a question inside Hitler's mind. A question that would become critical when the first Allied soldiers finally reached France. Was Normandy the real invasion, or was it only the beginning? And that hesitation was exactly what the Allies needed. June 6, 1944. After years of planning, the moment finally arrived. Before sunrise, thousands of Allied aircraft moved through the darkness. Paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines. Warships crossed the English Channel, and more than 150,000 Allied soldiers moved toward the coast of France. The largest amphibious invasion in history had begun. Operation Overlord was underway. The real target was no longer hidden. The Allies were landing at Normandy. For German commanders near the coast, the situation quickly became serious. Reports started arriving. Enemy ships had been spotted. Paratroopers were landing. Beach defenses were under attack. The invasion they had been waiting for was finally happening. But there was still one question. Was this the real attack, or was it only a distraction? That single question was the victory of Operation Fortitude, because even as Allied soldiers fought on the beaches, the fake army was still influencing German decisions. The imaginary force in Britain had not disappeared. The fake radio messages continued. The false intelligence continued. The illusion remained alive. To Germany, Patton's army was still waiting. And if Patton had not attacked yet, maybe the biggest invasion was still coming. This created a dangerous problem for the German response. Their strongest forces could not simply move wherever they wanted. If Germany sent too many troops toward Normandy, and the real attack came at Calais, the result could be a disaster. So they waited. They watched. They hesitated, exactly as the Allies hoped. The first hours of D-Day were brutal. Nothing about the invasion was easy. On the beaches, soldiers faced machine guns. artillery, mines, and heavy resistance. Every meter of ground came at a cost. The success of the operation was never guaranteed. But while Allied soldiers fought to secure the coastline, Operation Fortitude was fighting a completely different battle. A battle for time. Every hour Germany hesitated gave the Allies another hour to land more troops, more vehicles, more supplies, more equipment. The beachhead became stronger. The chance to push them back became smaller. And the deception did not end after June 6th. That was what made Operation Fortitude different. Most tricks stop working once the real event happens. But this one continued. Even after Normandy was clearly under attack, the Allies maintained the illusion. The ghost army remained. Fake communications continued. False reports kept reaching German intelligence. The message was always the same. Normandy was not the main event. The real attack was still coming. Calais was still the target. Inside German command, uncertainty remained. Every decision carried risk. Move too early, and they could fall into an Allied trap. Wait too long, and Normandy could become impossible to stop. The deception had created the perfect strategic problem. Germany had forces. Germany had weapons. Germany had experienced commanders. But they were fighting against an enemy they could not see. An army that existed only in reports, only in radio signals, only in their imagination. Days passed, then weeks. The Allies continued expanding from Normandy. More soldiers arrived. More territory was captured. The invasion force grew stronger. And still, part of Germany's attention remained fixed on a second attack that would never come. The fake army had completed its mission. It never fired a weapon. It never crossed the channel. It never fought a battle. But it had done something just as powerful. It had influenced the choices of the enemy. And in war, sometimes changing what your opponent believes is more important than destroying what they have. Eventually, the illusion began to collapse. The signs became impossible to ignore. The massive invasion at Calais never arrived. The army that Germany had been waiting for never moved. The powerful force under Patton's command never crossed the English Channel, because there was nothing to send. The tanks were not preparing for battle. The camps were not filled with a massive secret army. The radio messages were not the sounds of a hidden invasion force. They were pieces of a carefully designed illusion, one of the greatest military lies ever created. For weeks, Germany had prepared for a battle against an army that did not exist. Every decision had been influenced by the possibility of another attack. Every delay gave the Allies something they desperately needed: time. Time to secure Normandy, time to bring in reinforcements, time to move deeper into France. The battlefield was not only controlled by weapons, it was controlled by belief. And this was the true power of Operation Fortitude. The Allies did not simply invent a story. They created a world where the story appeared real, a world with fake bases, fake equipment, fake communications, fake plans, and carefully controlled information. Every detail supported another detail, every clue pointed in the same direction, until the false version of reality became more convincing than the truth. The greatest strength of the deception was not making Germany believe something impossible. It was making Germany believe something that already made sense. Calais was logical. Patton was dangerous. The reports seemed reliable. The evidence appeared overwhelming. The conclusion felt obvious, and that was exactly why it worked. Military history is filled with battles decided by numbers. More soldiers, better weapons, greater resources. But Operation Fortitude proved something different. Sometimes the most powerful weapon on a battlefield is not a tank, not a plane, not an army. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is an idea planted inside the enemy's mind. The fake army that fooled Hitler never won a battle. It never captured territory. It never destroyed enemy forces. Most of its soldiers never existed. But its impact was real. Because war is not only about what happens on the battlefield, it is about decisions, fear, assumptions, and the information commanders trust. Operation Fortitude showed that a carefully designed illusion could change the actions of one of the most powerful armies in the world. The Allies did not just attack German defenses, they attacked German expectations, and before the first soldiers reached Normandy, before the first battles began, one of the most important victories of D-Day had already been won, not with bullets, not with bombs, but with a fake army. That changed history.